Welcome to the International Straight Talk video series on the big emerging markets of the 1990s and beyond. The international marketplace for high-quality American goods and services is changing rapidly, and along with these changes come major new opportunities for American business. Of course, it takes specialized skills and know-how to compete successfully in foreign markets, and we believe that no area holds greater potential competitive advantages for American business than time and effort spent mastering the critical people side of doing business internationally. That's why the International Small Business Development Center, William Drake & Associates, GTE, TU Electric, and Texas Instruments have joined together to sponsor this video series. The writer, developer, and producer of the International Straight Talk video series and accompanying computer applications is Bill Drake, an internationally recognized speaker, trainer, and innovator in the area of business applications of human relation skills.
Hello, and welcome to the International Straight Talk series, produced jointly by the Dallas, Texas International Small Business Development Center, an agency of the Dallas County Community College District, and by William Drake & Associates. We gratefully acknowledge the ongoing support of the U.S. Small Business Administration for the development of these programs. This International Straight Talk video is designed to help American business, and especially American small and mid-sized business, to be more effective in South Africa. It's approximately 60 minutes long and will be divided into two parts. We suggest you view parts 1 and 2 separately, largely because the video format is your basic talking head, that's me, combined with bulleted screens. While the talking head format is definitely not entertainment, it is the best way to get across a lot of critical information in a short time. And we presume that's why you're here. Fortunately for all of us, this video also includes several highly useful interviews with American and South African business people who've done business in South Africa and who understand what it takes to build solid business relationships in this distinctive cultural environment. Your competitive position in South Africa can be significantly improved by close attention to a few key human relations factors. There are a few things you can do that are more effective in helping you and your business stand out in the estimation of potential South African business associates. We'll provide you with plenty of food for thought in this area. This is a high priority, need-to-know item on the agenda, since our American perspectives on race simply don't hold in the cultural context of South African business, where race realities are very different, very complex, and very important in core business processes like choosing your associates, designing entry and market strategies, and managing your investment. South African business and politics are full of old friends, old allies, old antagonists, and old enemies. Not only individuals, but also families, groups, and tribes have friends and enemies. Hands-on American business owners, managers, or operators, as well as American professionals and entrepreneurs seeking opportunities in South Africa, will have to deal with these kinds of complex issues and brand new perspectives on the ground in real time. So let's begin at the beginning.
One of the biggest misconceptions that I've found is that people think that South Africa is a all tribal type of community, and the blacks are walking around in grass skirts and spears and things like that. Or some people think that it's all a big segregated area. All of the it looks like Beverly Hills, and all of the whites control everything and the blacks are just there. It's not like that. It's a very not quite integrated, like the United States, but it is somewhat of an integrated type society.
The black South African peoples of today are descended from a complex set of language and culture groups, but two main groups dominate South African society today. A single language group includes the Xhosa, Zulu, and Swazi peoples. A second major language group, the Sotho group, includes the northern and southern Sotho and Tswana peoples. The Sotho are the descendants of Bantu-speaking people who came south from Central Africa 2,000 years ago and settled in the high plateaus and valleys of the Transvaal region. The Sotho group includes several important and politically influential subgroups, each of which plays a distinctive and growing role in social and political life. But the Sotho as a community have historically been dominated by other black groups, principally the Zulu and the Xhosa. Both the Zulu and the Xhosa people are descended from a common, entirely different language group, and they have very different social, economic, political, and cultural values and norms from the Sotho people. They came late to southern Africa, and when they arrived, they quickly dominated the societies of the Sotho speakers. The Xhosa and Zulu originally settled inland in today's Transvaal and along the eastern coast, roughly in today's KwaZulu, an area of rich valleys, rugged mountains, beautiful seacoast, and stark contrasts. From here, they dominated the Sotho peoples and maintained their independence long into the settlement of the Cape by Europeans. The domination of one major black group by another is not just a historical fact, but has major implications for American business seeking distributors, looking at markets, doing their due diligence on a prospect, and in other ways which call for careful consideration.
If you are doing business with a black African, it is a fact that you are really doing business with many people within his family and within his tribe. He will receive a great deal of support from all of those people, sometimes financial support. I mean, they actually even have their own lending institutions within the tribes. And there are very strict regulations on when you can get money from them and how it can be used, and they're adhered to by all the members of that tribe. So there is tremendous cooperation in a business sense among the tribe, and that will definitely influence how you do business with them and your success with them.
The Portuguese, Bartholomew Diaz, first stopped in South Africa on his way east in 1488. But it wasn't until 1652 when the Dutch became the first European residents, establishing a refueling and provisioning station for Dutch merchant ships in the East Indies trade. As time went on, the Cape became a very attractive end-of-the-world kind of place for a colorful community of French, Dutch, and German settlers. Most were either religious or political refugees, and some were just plain on the run. But all were opportunity seekers, and many were simply looking for land to farm. The descendants of these original settlers form the bulk of the Afrikaner population, and the story of how they've remained so coherent a social group and so distinct is essential for Americans to know. When these first Europeans arrived in the mid-1600s, southern Africa had been widely settled in the inland and eastern coastal regions for over 1,500 years by the Sotho peoples. A few hundred years before the arrival of the first white people, the Sotho had been subjugated and dominated by new arrivals from the north, the Zulu and the Xhosa, who had divided up the best of the Sotho lands among themselves. Now, the first Europeans and their early descendants remained largely in the Cape area, enabling the Zulu and Xhosa to continue in their independence and in their mutual domination of the Sotho peoples. From the mid-1600s to the late 1700s, the original white settlements gradually expanded, leading to a series of frontier wars, culminating with the well-remembered Battle of Great Fish River between the Afrikaners and the Xhosa. However, it was not the Xhosa who suffered most under early Dutch rule. The original black people of the Cape were Hottentots and Bushmen, and it was these unfortunate people who the Afrikaners first enslaved. This early use of slaves by the white European settlers, of course, introduced an element of race conflict into their relationships with the indigenous black societies, which haunts South African society to this day. Toward the end of the 1700s, however, the British Empire became dominant in the East Indies trade, and to protect her critical sea routes as well as to expand her colonial base, England took the Cape of Good Hope by force in 1795. So picture this in your mind. After 150 years of living under their own legal and social codes and norms, the Afrikaner people of the Cape suddenly found themselves under British military rule, forced to speak English, and treated as distinctly second-class citizens. The final blow from the Afrikaner perspective came in 1836, when the British took away the legal basis for slavery. Generations of Afrikaners had grown up believing that it was their right and an economic necessity to use slave labor in order to run their farms. There are striking parallels to the United States and to the divisions over our Civil War, or war between the states, which was fought over the issue of slavery, but there is also at least one striking difference. The Afrikaners packed up their belongings, burned their homes and farms, and moved north as an entire community on what has become known as the Great Trek. Picture how America might have turned out if, upon President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, the entire white population of the South had burned its plantations, loaded its belongings onto wagons, and headed out to the Rocky Mountains to settle, unopposed by the Northern government. That's essentially what happened. Practically the entire Afrikaner population of the Cape trekked hundreds of miles north right into the center of Zululand. The Zulu people had just experienced a glory period of power and influence under the charismatic leadership of their great king and military leader, Shaka. Unfortunately for the Zulu, Shaka was assassinated by his brother shortly before the Voortrekkers arrived. Thus, in the middle of their greatest historical crisis, the Zulu were led not by their greatest king, but by his incompetent, jealous assassin brother, who was a military disaster. Many Afrikaners, even today, celebrate their victory at Blood River in 1838, in which 500 Voortrekkers circled their wagons and defeated 10,000 prime Zulu warriors, confirming for the Afrikaners that God was indeed on their side and that the victory was a sign that they were the rightful rulers of this land. The once powerful and dominant Zulu, and under them the Xhosa, and under them the Sotho peoples, all were broken by the Afrikaners, and each pushed off their best land and then forced to coexist in poverty alongside the increasingly prosperous Afrikaner society. Although the Zulu remained strong enough to defeat the British in major military campaigns and to resist final conquest until late in the 1800s, neither the Zulu nor any other of the original African peoples ever recovered from this period of internal conflict and treachery and the fateful trek of the Afrikaners. This is just one of many stories which illustrate why any American doing business in South Africa today has to be aware of the histories of the groups you're dealing with, as well as of the organizations and the individuals involved. As you can well imagine, the story of how the Zulu were brought down as a people by the actions of a jealous brother of their greatest king is not just an interesting bit of history. It's alive in the politics and society of South Africa today. For example, it's at least part of the reason why KwaZulu politics are so intense and sometimes violent. People remember this disastrous period and its cause and demand strong leadership, which in South Africa can easily translate into confrontational politics. By the 1850s, the Voortrekkers were settled comfortably on the best of former Zulu lands and had established the independent Boer republics of the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. From their secure position on this vast interior plateau, they exchanged regular artillery fire, political, with the English, who largely ignored them and grew increasingly wealthy and influential by dominating the exploding Cape-based merchant trade. Well, the discovery of diamonds at Kimberley in 1870, and then the discovery of large gold deposits in the Witwatersrand region of the Transvaal in 1886 upset the rough equilibrium which had prevailed between the Boers and the English for only a single generation. The English, who by then controlled the country both internally and externally, moved in and took over once the magnitude of the wealth involved was realized. Naturally, the Boers resisted militarily, and over a 20-year period, a couple of bloody wars with plenty of atrocities and hatred on both sides were fought for control of these mountains of wealth. The period of 1899 to 1902 was particularly nasty, and Afrikaners today remember with anger the concentration camps into which their women and children were herded by British troops, where many, many thousands died.